In the summer of 2013, the Philadelphia 76ers embarked on the most radical, unapologetic, and controversial team-building experiment in the history of North American professional sports. It was dubbed The Process. Brainchild of former Stanford-educated analytics visionary Sam Hinkie, the logic was ruthlessly mathematical. In the NBA, mediocre teams are caught in purgatory. The only way to guarantee a superstar, the ultimate currency needed to win a championship, was to systematically strip the roster of veteran talent, lose as many games as humanly possible, hoard high draft picks, and exploit the draft lottery system until lightning struck. For 4 painful years, Philadelphia sports fans endured historic losing streaks, including a 10-72 disaster in 2016. They suffered through years of unwatchable basketball because they were promised a golden playoff, a decade-long dynasty anchored by generational talents. They won 75 games in 4 years with 253 losses. They had 28 total first-round and second-round picks were acquired, 0 Eastern Conference Finals appearances in the process, and they went 0-5 in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Yet over a decade after Sam Hinkie pressed reset, the ultimate tally of the process is a staggering failure. Despite drafting an MVP in Joel Embiid, despite holding multiple number 1 overall draft picks, and despite cycling through superstars like Jimmy Butler, James Harden, and Paul George, the Philadelphia 76ers have never once advanced past the second round of the playoffs. How did a franchise with an unprecedented war chest of cap space, draft assets, and young talent manage to mismanage almost every single critical decision along the way? In this video, I'm going to be telling the entire unfiltered story of how the process was conceived, hijacked, mismanaged, and ultimately killed. Make sure to like, subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss a daily NBA video that I upload. I do post daily, and these videos take a very long time to produce, so a like and subscribe would mean the world to me. Other than that, let's get straight into it. Now, to understand why the process failed, we have to appreciate how brilliant its core thesis actually was. When Sam Hinkie took over as general manager in May 2013, Philadelphia was the textbook definition of NBA quicksand. They had just finished 34-48, stuck in the 8th seed loop, holding 0 elite assets and no realistic path to contention. Hinkie identified a fundamental truth about the NBA draft system. The draft is an imperfect projection science, but higher picks dramatically increase the probability of landing a top-tier superstar. Hinkie's strategy was built on 3 uncompromising pillars: bottoming out completely, with maximizing top 3 draft lottery odds; asset accumulation, trading current veterans for future draft capital; and exploiting marginal talent, giving unproven players minimum deals to find diamond-in-the-rough role players. Hinkie traded all-star point guard Jrue Holiday on draft night for Nerlens Noel and a future first-round pick. He traded reigning Rookie of the Year Michael Carter-Williams at the absolute peak of his value. He turned the 76ers roster into a revolving door of D-League talent and injured lottery prospects. And in 2014, the strategy yielded its crown jewel, selecting Joel Embiid at number 3 overall, despite a broken navicular bone in his foot that would sideline him for 2 full years. Hinkie was willing to pay a multi-year delayed gratification game, but he underestimated one unstoppable force: the NBA league office. By late 2015, the 76ers were 1-30. That means 1 wins and 30 losses, by the way. I didn't misspeak or anything. They were 1-30. The losing was so systemic and so blatant that rival owners began complaining to Commissioner Adam Silver about lost ticket revenues during Philadelphia road games. Adam Silver stepped in. The league office pressured 76ers manager partner Josh Harris to bring in a babysitter, appointing a USA basketball chairman as a special advisor. Recognizing his authority was stripped, Sam Hinkie resigned in April of 2016, leaving behind a legendary 13-page resignation letter warning of the organizational friction to come. The post-Hinkie front office carousel. In 2018, there was a collaborative front office. In 2018 to 2020, they had Elton Brand, and in 2020 to now, they had Daryl Morey. What followed was a masterclass in nepotism and administrative incompetence. Jerry Colangelo brought in his son, Brian Colangelo, as GM. Brian Colangelo did not share Hinkie's long-term patience. He inherited a mountain of cap space and draft picks, the greatest war chest in modern sports, and he immediately began squandering it on win-now moves, culminating in the single wildest scandal in NBA executive history, the burner Twitter account scandal in 2018, where Colangelo was caught leaking medical info and criticizing his own players online. The process wasn't just ruined by bad basketball moves, it was also sabotaged by administrative chaos. The foundation of the process was that high draft picks would net superstars, but draft picks are only valuable if you pick the right players. Look at how Philadelphia handled their supreme draft assets from 2015 to 2017. In 2015, they took Jahlil Okafor, number 3 overall, over Kristaps Porzingis and Devin Booker. Okafor was an archaic post scorer who couldn't play defense or fit alongside Joel Embiid, and he was traded 2 years later for pretty much next to nothing. In 2016, with the first overall pick, they drafted Ben Simmons, standing 6'10" with elite passing and defensive instincts. Simmons looked like a generational playmaker, but Simmons possessed a fatal flaw in the game of basketball, which was a complete refusal to develop a jump shot or shoot with his natural hand. Over 5 seasons in Philadelphia, Simmons made just 5 3-pointers total, clogging the lane and severely crippling Joel Embiid's spacing in half-court playoff scenarios, and Ben Simmons just had so much potential, but just could not work out in the NBA. And then in 2017, with the first overall pick again, the Philadelphia 76ers drafted Markelle Fultz, which turned out to just kind of be a disaster. The defining tragedy of the rebuild, Philadelphia held the number 3 pick in a loaded 2017 draft. Brian Colangelo panicked and traded the number 3 pick plus a valuable future first-round pick to Boston to move up to number 1 for point guard Markelle Fultz. In that trade, Boston received the number 3 pick, which turned out to be Jason Tatum, and the 2019 first-round pick. Basically, Tatum became a perennial All-NBA superstar and an NBA champion, while Fultz suffered mysterious shoulder outlet syndrome and was traded. Fultz developed a mysterious nerve condition known as thoracic outlet syndrome, completely losing his shooting form. And while Boston turned the number 3 pick into Jason Tatum, who would dominate the East for the next decade, and he's still doing it, Philadelphia's number 1 pick played just 33 games for the franchise before ultimately being traded to Orlando for Jonathan Simmons. By 2018, despite the draft blunders, Joel Embiid had developed into an MVP-caliber center. Philadelphia had one last window to assemble a championship team around him. Instead, general manager Elton Brand engaged in a panic-driven asset fire sale. In November 2018, Philly traded Robert Covington and Dario Saric for Jimmy Butler. Months later, they traded 2 first-round picks and Landry Shamet for Tobias Harris. The 2018 to 2019 76ers were stacked: Embiid, Simmons, Butler, Harris, and J.J. Redick, and they pretty much look like they're going to an Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in the process entire existence. But they even took the eventual champion Toronto Raptors to a Game 7 in the Eastern Conference semifinals, where they ultimately ended up losing on arguably the greatest game winner ever, on Kawhi Leonard's miraculous 4-bounce shot at the buzzer. The 2019 free agency disaster left Jimmy Butler they allowed him to leave in sign and trade to Miami Heat. Tobias Harris signed to a massive 5-year, $100 million maximum contract extension, and Al Horford signed to a catastrophic 4-year, $109 million deal, and he was benched. What did Philadelphia do that summer? They let Jimmy Butler walk away to Miami. They chose Ben Simmons and head coach Brett Brown over Butler. And to replace him, they handed Tobias Harris a record-setting $180 million contract and signed an aging Al Horford to $109 million. In one offseason, Philly transformed a title contender into a slow, ill-fitted, cap-clogged nightmare. The psychological breaking point of the process occurred on June 20th, 2021. Game 7 of the Eastern Conference semifinals against the 5th seed Atlanta Hawks. With 3 minutes and 30 seconds remaining in the fourth quarter of a tied game, Ben Simmons backed down Danilo Gallinari, turning toward the basket, and had a wide-open, uncontested dunk to give Philly the lead. Instead of dunking, Simmons panicked and passed the ball off to Matisse Thybulle. That single moment shattered the franchise and pretty much ruined Ben Simmons' career. Simmons refused to ever play for the 76ers again, holding out the entire 2021 to 2022 season. Daryl Morey eventually salvaged the situation by trading Simmons to Brooklyn for James Harden, but Harden was no longer prime Houston Harden. He was an aging star whose chemistry with Embiid fell apart in successive second-round exits against Miami and Boston. If you look at the brutal playoff record of Joel Embiid's 76ers in the Eastern Conference, you'll see that in 2018, they lost 1-4 to the Boston Celtics, with rookie Ben Simmons being held to 1 point in Game 2. In 2019, as I mentioned, they lost in 7 to the Toronto Raptors on a Kawhi Leonard game-winning buzzer beater, which is pretty much the closest they got to Eastern Conference Finals. In 2021, they lost in Game 7 to the Atlanta Hawks, where Ben Simmons passed on an open dunk in a Game 5 choke. In 2022, they lost in 6 to the Miami Heat, where Embiid had an orbital fracture and a thumb tear. And in 2023, they lost to the Boston Celtics again in 7. They blew a 3-2 series lead, and they just collapsed in Game 7, where Tatum dropped 51 on them. That's 5 second-round series appearances and 5 brutal eliminations. 3 of them were in 7 games. But out of all that, they came away with 0 Eastern Conference Finals appearances. So when history looks back on the process, what is the ultimate verdict? Was Sam Hinkie's theory flawed? No. The math behind accumulating elite assets was sound. The failure of the process wasn't the theory of tanking, it was the human execution that followed. And I'm not advocating for tanking or anything, but I'm just calling it for how I see it. It was the league forcing out the architect before he could finish the job. It was front office mismanagement, burner Twitter accounts, drafting 2 consecutive number 1 overall picks who forgot how to shoot, and letting Jimmy Butler walk out the door, and paying $180 million to Tobias Harris over Jimmy Butler. Most tragically, the process wasted the prime of Joel Embiid, who was an MVP-level talent, and he did get his MVP, and he gave his body, his knees, and his heart to the city of Philadelphia, only to be surrounded by organizational instability year after year after year. The 76ers traded away 4 years of their dignity for a promise, and a decade later, they are left with nothing to show for it but empty rafters and broken dreams. Now, is next year the year? Because they have a pretty stacked roster, but as I've mentioned, they've had pretty stacked rosters the past years, and they just couldn't get anything done with it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I do want to hear from all NBA fans, especially 76ers fans, in the comment sections below. Who do you blame most for the failure of the process? Was it Brian Colangelo, Ben Simmons, Elton Brand, or Sam Hinkie himself? Make sure you drop your thoughts below in the comment section. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe with notifications turned on for more daily NBA content. As always, these videos take hours upon hours upon hours to produce for each video. I do appreciate every single one of you for watching these videos and watching the channel. But other than that, that's going to do it for this video.